Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thursday night edition. We're going to have some fun. Dr. John Brandenburg is here to talk everything from space and the cosmos to UFOs and alien grays. We're going to have a lot of fun with him tonight as we get ready for tonight's show and say hello to Race Fan in the gold medal position, Tim Mothman in his goatee with a silver, Kitty Caddywhack with a bronze medal tonight. Hello there, Miriam. How are you? Robert Lamoth, Kitty, and Frankie B. How you doing? Jimmy J. Jordan Gonzalez is back. Jimmy J. Jordan Gonzalez will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Little Timmy James, how's it going? Road Flare, nice to see you. Mel WD40 is here, lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. If you want it to go smooth, you literally have to lube up. You have no choice. So Mel, start to lube. Lube away, Mel. Just smooth. Phyllis Boucher Perry, how are you? Dogface Simon, nice to see you as we continue on with our roll call. Tiger Dave Williams, or Dave Tiger Williams. I'm going to call you Tiger now. That's a compliment. And Joanne, how are you? And Dave Williams, if you've never heard that before, look it up on YouTube, Dave Tiger Williams. Then you'll know why I will call you that out of respect. Number 2 in your program, starting on defense tonight from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson, Resonate, how you doing? Noble Patrick, Lee the Bee, nice to see you both here. As we continue on with our roll call, Sandy B, how you doing tonight? Thank you for joining us. Operation Shutdown, how's it going? Magnus Vermagnuson, Major Lee, Scott B, W. David Page. How you guys all doing? Hi there, Pam Harris. Nice to see you tonight as we continue on with our roll call. Mama Catherine. Mwah! I love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing very, very well. You're the best. Continuing on with our roll call here. Forrest Louis has returned. Forrest Louis will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Continuing on, we say hello next to, let's scroll down a bit. Political Foolishness, nice to see you. Dragonfly, thanks for coming on in. Al Garay over on Twitch did 2,000 squats in 5.5 minutes to warm up for tonight's show because he was all excited about Dr. John Brandenburg. So good job, Al Garay. You are jacked for tonight. Blue Cruise, Necessary Dialogue. Good to see you both here. Let's continue on. Dead Fish, Matthew Goodka. Good to have you here. Hi, JSCO. Chill Farm Brisbane. How you doing? Sorry. And who's next? Well, let's see here. Scrolling on down. Fapster. Susan Alloway. Nice to see you. Hi, 11. Not 10, not 12. 11. Scott's Life, how you doing? As we continue on with our roll call, EPL, UFOs, USOs, UAP, ETVs, and the phenomena. Welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for joining us. And Forrest Louie, thank you for kicking off the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate your love and support, my friend. Thank you very, very much. Adding to it, Richard Minnick, thank you. Hello again. I hope you're having a great night. And welcome. And thank you for the super chat. Hi, Carla. How you doing? Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Always a pleasure to have you all here as we have Dr. John Brandenburg talking everything from UFOs and what's out in the cosmos to aliens. And I think he's got some aliens. He might have some aliens himself. We are in roll call right now. I am losing my voice due to whatever God's creation is. Excuse me. Because I always love to bark in your ears. We got like 10 seconds. Do me a favor, everybody. Throw those horns up and let's rock. Of Central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SLR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our show as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon at the Space Travelers. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. We got a great show planned out for you tonight. Dr. John Brandenburg is going to be here momentarily to talk about everything from UFOs, aliens, ET contact, what turns the grays gray, and whatever else is flying up in the cosmos. This guy's brilliant. You're going to love him. He feels like one of us. We'll get to him momentarily. Then in hour number 3, it's a busy one, a busy one. We got Swamp Dweller, then Robin Haynes for the Cryptid Report. It's Dave 101 night, and the weird news of the week. Dr. John Brandenburg is a theoretical plasma physicist, born in Rochester, Minnesota. Good hockey around there, by the way. Grew up in Medford, Oregon, though. He obtained his BA in physics with mathematics as a minor from Southern Oregon University in 1975 and obtained his MS, his master's in 77, PhD in plasma physics, both from the University of California at Davis in 1981. He is presently working as a consultant for Morningstar Applied Physics LLC and a part-time instructor of astronomy, physics, and mathematics at Madison College and other learning institutions in Madison, Wisconsin. Well, this guy's a cheesehead. You can tell he likes his Packers. Before this, he worked at Orbital Technologies in Madison as a senior propulsion scientist, working on space plasma technologies, nuclear fusion, and advanced space propulsion. Well, this guy also loves his UFOs. Dr. Brandenburg has authored the popular science books Death on Mars, Life and Death on Mars, Beyond Einstein's Unified Field, and Dead Mars, Dying Earth, with Monica Ricks Paxton as well. Let's just get right to it. because I don't want to waste any more time not having him on the show here. Dr. John Brandenburg, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio. How are you?
It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show, Scott. And I'm really pleased about the roll call of people who are listening. I hope to give them their money's worth.
Well, we're going to give them their money's worth tonight, because I bet you, and maybe I'm going out on a whim here, that way back when you were called Little Johnny Brandenburg, before you had doctor in your title.
Yeah.
That you were not even thinking about UFOs. You were not thinking that this would be part of your life, trying to study what aliens are and plasma theory and everything like that.
That would be partly correct. When I was quite young, UFO sightings were quite common, and I saw one over Medford, and everyone else saw it too. It was in the newspaper the next day. But for various reasons, when the government said there are no UFOs, UFOs are not ETs, move along here, folks, nothing here to see. It was the Condon report, and they shut down Project Blue Book. You saw a UFO, you couldn't call the Air Force anymore. There was no one to call. So I actually accepted that. And part of it was I decided I was going to work for the government, like my uncle Will, who worked on the Manhattan Project, William Surrey. And I wanted to be as conventional as possible in my thinking. And, you try to, you realize you're going to go into a very rigorous program to get your PhD in physics, and that you couldn't appear flaky. You had to appear, everything that you agreed with the government, the official government line on everything. And so I only kind of re-examined the whole UFO being extraterrestrial after investigating Mars with the what's called the Independent Mars Investigation Team, where we investigated what looks like the remains of a dead civilization on Mars, and that Mars was a planet very similar to Earth with an ocean. I'm the discoverer of the Mars ocean, by the way. I presented at a scientific conference at NASA with 1,000 Mars scientists in the room listening to me. And but because of my association with the Cydonia investigation, they never give me credit. They talk about the Mars ocean as if it just suddenly, it was obvious in retrospect. But anyway, so enough that I'm complaining that life is unfair, and we all know it is. So basically, I came full circle from being a kid, being interested in UFOs and watching Star Trek and everything like this, and then kind of putting my mind in a straitjacket to get through graduate school at a government lab, and then rediscovering the whole UFO thing, the idea of living extraterrestrials, flesh and blood extraterrestrials living on Mars, and Mars being a living planet like the Earth. So that was my evolution. We satisfied ourselves that there was a dead civilization there, and it ended catastrophically, apparently, with a nuclear holocaust. We're talking hydrogen bombs as big as the Empire State Building dropped from outer space onto Mars. Mars with an ocean, and so it took the planet Mars from being like Earth to being its present state. Now, how do we know that this was a nuclear? Because the Mars atmosphere is full of telltale isotopes that are created by nuclear explosions, specifically xenon-129. But anyway, you can read about that in the book Death on Mars. So not only did I become acquainted with the idea that there were other flesh and blood aliens in the universe, and they carved faces that look like humans because we found more faces at a different site called Galaxis Chaos. That we lived in a rough neighborhood, and I grew up in a rough. Medford, Oregon, was a very educational place to grow up because it was kind of a rough town. It was a logging, mostly logging town, and when I grew up in it, and it was a very kind of hardening experience. It was, in fact, it was a great preparation for being a professional physicist trying to advocate for like unified field theory and the physics of a nuclear holocaust on Mars, because when you get to that level of science, science is science at that level where you're dealing with the really important issues is a lot like professional basketball. It's not supposed to be a contact sport, but under the net in a close game for a championship, in the final minutes of a championship game with a close score, the knees and elbows are flying between the players. It becomes a full contact sport. Just watch what happened to Caitlin Clark. That was horrendous. I hope she quits and goes to Europe or something, plays in the European leagues or something. Basically, you have to be a pretty tough character to. Einstein was a tough character, and you have to be somebody who decides what they're going to believe, and then goes to conferences and is able to argue with people who start heckling you from the audience. You can't say that, And I said, I went to one conference. Fortunately, I brought my girlfriend, who was gorgeous. She was standing beside, it was a presentation of what's called a poster paper, where you put your paper, instead of presenting it from a podium, you put it up on a billboard. It is, a bunch of kind of typed sheets of paper I derived the value of the gravitation constant G from my theory. It's called the GEM unified field. If you look up GEM unified field theory on the internet, Brandenburg, that's me. And it produces the if you have two rocks out in space of different masses, mass 1, mass 2, and they're separated by a distance d, then the gravity force between them, pulling them together, is the mass of one times the mass of the other, product of the masses, divided by the distance squared between them, times big G. So big G is probably one of the most important numbers in the universe. And my theory gives it to within a part per 10,000 from a simple formula. And when I presented that at the string theory conference, they gave me the highest compliment possible. They got mad at me.
I want to ask you.
Sure.
I want to ask you, because a couple of minutes ago you said something really profound, that you are thoroughly convinced that Mars was destroyed by a nuclear holocaust.
Yes.
How do you figure that out? For us not so smart people who are now listening to this and saying, how do you even know that if you've never been there? How do you figure that?
We have, one of the nice things about Mars, we have all this scientific data. So we can analyze, they not only have studied the chemicals of Mars, the chemical makeup of Mars. For instance, Mars is red because it's covered with oxidized iron, hematite. And hematite, if you look at pictures of Earth from space, deserts like the Sahara Desert, or the deserts of the Southwest from space, they're bright red. It's because the oxygen in the atmosphere oxidizes the iron from lava. When lava comes out of the ground, it's in a low, the iron in it is in a low oxidation state. It's black. As it weathers and gets exposed to oxygen, it turns bright red. It's the same red color as our blood. It's iron mixed with high levels of oxygen. So Mars is red because it formerly had a oxygen atmosphere. I'm not the first person to propose that, by the way. First person to propose that was Carl Sagan. And then somebody came and chatted with him, and he decided not to talk about that anymore. But not only does this government have a UFO cover-up going, it's got a Mars cover-up going. It's also got a moon cover-up going. And, you know, you asked me if there was anything I was uncomfortable talking about, and I said the hollow earth theory, you know, because I think that's ridiculous. But the other thing I'm not supposed to talk about is the moon. I actually had a government official tell me, Brandenburg, we don't care if you talk about Mars as much as you want. Just don't talk about the moon. And the reason is because I was part of the Clementine mission to the moon, where we discovered ice at the poles of the moon. And they took thousands, millions of pictures of the lunar surface. It was a photo recon mission. It was a Department of Defense mission. We had NASA ride along, but it was a Defense Department mission to the moon. You say, why would the government send a photo recon mission to the moon, the military? Well, don't talk about that, Brandenburg. And, you know, I talked about it a little bit on one television documentary about just part of being on the mission. And the night it aired, I got 2 angry phone calls, even though it had happened 30 years ago. It happened in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, talked about it in the late, you know, about 2010. That was like 20 years after. And these people called me up. One was my old mission boss, and the other one was a scientist from the Navy, and chewed me out over the phone and said, don't talk about that mission anymore. And
Bad doc.
I said,
Bad.
why not? And I said, why not? It's been 20 years. And they said, it's because we told you to.
What's
Now,
it like?
if you want to know what's really on the moon, you got to watch the Japanese science fiction movie Mysterians. Made in 1957. It depicts these lovely Japanese women being abducted into flying saucers, underground UFO bases, aliens with bases on the moon, and all sorts of directed energy weapons. And it's a great movie. Everybody ought to watch it. And let's see, there was, yeah, that's basically it. I've kind of drifted off the subject. Bring me back. What do you want me to talk about?
Well, just we got about 5.5 minutes before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Just kind of reel it in about the nuclear holocaust. Was there a civilization of aliens there? Do you believe aliens might still be there?
I'm still here. Suddenly the sound is breaking up. See, someone is sending me a message. They don't want me to talk about that other celestial body that is in the sky right now. So that's okay.
Oh.
We won't talk about that anymore. Let's talk about Mars. Mars.
Yeah. What civilization was there that got destroyed?
Well, it looks like it was a primitive humanoid civilization. I mean, they carved large faces, they built pyramids, and they looked, the big pyramid is 5-sided, so it's not like ones on Earth, but the face in a helmet looks like the Olmecs carvings from Old Mexico. Then there's another place on Mars. That's a place called Cydonia Mensa, by the way. It's the face on Mars. That's the big face. And then there's another place on Mars where there's 2 faces carved into the landscape, one of which is wearing a helmet like the first face. It looks like about 2/3 the size of the Cydonia face. And it's a place called Galaxis Chaos. I love the name. And so these faces are basically human faces, and they date probably from 200 million years ago, before the dinosaurs were on Earth. So what that says is that the human race, far from being unique on the Earth, apparently is found elsewhere in the cosmos. Now that's very peculiar. That's a very peculiar idea. You have to look for Star Trek, where they commented that a lot of the races they encountered were basically humans. And of course, the Vulcans could intermarry with terrestrial humans and have children, like Spock. You know, his father was Vulcan and his mother was human. And there was Spock. And so they commented on that, along with the Prime Directive. That was one of the kind of recurring plot devices, is that very human beings were out there in the stars, not just on Earth. And this is reflected in what we found on Mars. Now, interestingly enough, one of the reports from the UFO field, and unfortunately we can't get any firm data on this. All we get are reports, leaks, but we know that's one way you find out things. Somebody tells you. The government is keeping this quiet, but I can tell you, that's what they do. And there are people out there who say they're from the Pleiades, which is a bright blue little star cluster. And it's mentioned in the Bible as a very important little star cluster. And there are people who fly in starships, and they look just like us. And they're friendly. They're pretty nice. Most of the encounters with them have been very friendly. So we have, and they view us as cousins, poor cousins, but still cousins. Now, of course, then the other group is that it features in a lot of stories is these little short gray guys, the grays. They're called grays because their skin tends to be kind of blue-gray. And there's precedent on Earth for creatures like that. Human beings are kind of pink, at least, you know, on the inside. But grays are apparently gray on the inside. They've done enough autopsies and stuff. And the reason is their blood apparently is copper-based. It uses a blood pigment called hemocyanin that's based on copper, not iron. Iron gives you red blood. Copper-based blood gives you blue blood. And blue blood is found in a lot of creatures on Earth, like tarantulas, scorpions, and also octopi and squid. And octopi are probably the smartest of all the invertebrates. So it's having blue blood is not an inhibitor of intelligence at all. I was commenting earlier when we were discussing this one place kept a lot of octopi in aquariums, and they discovered at night when they would turn out the lights, the octopi would sneak out. They can actually make short little excursions on land with their crawling along, and their gills can actually function as lungs temporarily, and they would go out to the other tanks and steal food and fish from the other tanks.
Wow.
And so the people decided to put an end to this by keeping the lights. Oh, yes.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we do have a break here at the bottom of the hour. Life on Mars, alien life forms, what are the grays? What's out in the cosmos? Dr. John Brandenburg is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to get more into it as we return right after this, everybody. Good start so far. Very good start.
Great. Lexi, how do you like to be addressed? As Scott?
I'm Dave.
David, I'm your David Scott, right?
I just go by Dave.
Oh,
I'm like
okay, Dave.
Madonna, Pele.
I for some reason, at this period of my life, almost everybody important I'm talking to is named David. Isn't that weird?
Well, thank you for calling me important. I don't think I very
You
much
are
am.
important. Hey, I'm on your show.
Well, and I appreciate that so much.
And I love the format. I'm having fun, and
Good.
I'm so glad that you have an interesting list of audience members who are tuning in. Yes, we'll discuss the octopi. They turned out the lights. No, they left the lights on all night and would watch the octopi, with infrared cameras at first because they could see what they were doing in the dark. But then they also since they turned on the lights, they could use just visible cameras. And they discovered the octopi would stay in their aquariums with the lights on. They would only sneak around when it was dark. They have very good eyes, by the way. Their eyes are adapted to looking at things at low light levels in the ocean. And so what they also found out was soon the lights would go out every night again. The octopi who live in salt water were squirting streams of salt water at the switches to short them out.
Wow.
They had figured out that this would make the lights turn off so they could go around and indulge in kleptomania like before. And they also found out there was one of the people, it was a female scientist who was dealing with them. The octopi decided they didn't like her. So every time she would come into the lab, they would squirt. They have kind of a jet propulsion device, and they would load it up with water and squirt it at her when she got close to their cages. So these were difficult little creatures to deal with because they were so smart. They thought they were about the same intelligence as house cats, at least. So anyway, there's an amusing story I can tell. So having blue blood is no inhibition to having a highly advanced nervous system at all. And they have very good eyes, by the way. Octopus eyes are almost as complicated as our own, and they have very good vision, but they're adapted for hunting underwater. But they actually go on land sometimes and hunt for crabs and stuff.
Yes.
Pity the poor crab that an octopus finds on near the seashore at low tide.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes lunch.
Oh yeah.
And they have copper-based blood. And what's interesting in Star Trek, Spock was supposed to have copper-based blood. He had blue blood. And
we have about 2 minutes left here, 2.5 minutes.
Okay. I'd like to talk about that. I've done some research on this. It's quite amazing. Blue blood works well if you have low oxygen levels, like in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some places in the ocean, the oxygen level gets pretty low. The fish don't like it, but the octopi does fine because it's got hemocyanin, which hemocyanin doesn't carry as much oxygen as red blood when you have oxygen-rich atmosphere. But it turns out in low levels of oxygen, it's much better to have blue blood. The copper-based blood works better at low temperatures and low oxygen levels than red blood.
Right.
So it looks, you could say, The Greys evolved on a planet that had lower oxygen and colder temperatures than Earth, and that's why they, or it was kind of just baked in that they would use this hemocyanin. Hemoglobin never got invented on their planet. So
All right, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are coming back from break here in about 15 seconds. Thank you to Louis and Richard for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support. Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Hi, gorgeous Larry. How you doing? Here we go. We go the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We greatly appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello, everyone tuning us in. We appreciate you. I want you to know that. And remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Dr. John Brandenburg is here. Before we get too far into it, Dr. John, you've got a new book out.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It's called Cosmic Awakening, and it's talking. It's trying to place the whole UFO phenomenon, and to some extent, what we found on Mars, into literally a big picture of where the human race is in the cosmos. What are we actually finding out about the cosmos? What is going to be our future? The future of the human race in the cosmos. And I'm an optimist. I believe our future will look like Star Trek. We're going through a slightly traumatic period. I liken it to childbirth in the book. You sooner or later you got to leave the womb, friends, and that's a rough couple hours journey sometimes, rougher for some than others, but it's the way of life. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to find out. Well, my best analogy is you're going to school at a high school and suddenly your family moves to a new town and you got to start at a new high school. You know what that's like, a lot of people. Suddenly you got to learn everything, all about who's who in this new high school. And you're a low person on the totem pole, and your first day at school, you flirt with a girl, and shortly thereafter, this big guy in the hall bumps you as you go by, so you bump him back. He challenges you to a fight in the parking lot. It turns out he's the high school quarterback, and you have just flirted with his girlfriend. So you just, it's the first day, the first couple of days of a new high school are rough. You have to make a lot of adjustments. You have to make friends. You have to learn who not to hang around with, et cetera, et cetera. So the human race is going through an experience like that. And part of their introduction to the nature of the cosmos, by the way, was Roswell.
Okay.
Roswell kind of set the tone for what has followed. And here's what happened. The United States and the rest of the world had just gone through World War II. Roswell happened less than 2 years after the armistice that ended World War II. And there'd been a wave of UFO sightings. There were only 5 nuclear weapons on Earth. The United States had the complete monopoly on nuclear weapons. The Russians hadn't figured out how to build them yet. And even if they did, they had no bombers to carry them to the United States. And all of those nuclear weapons were stored, guess where? At Roswell, New Mexico.
Weird.
There were 5 of the what's called Fat Man plutonium bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki. They were cheaper to make. And so they had stored all 5 of our nuclear weapons at Roswell with bombers to carry them, the B-29 bomber to carry them. And we were trying to forget about the war. We were trying to bring we were trying to embrace peace. And it was near the 4th of July. And there'd been this big surge in UFO sightings. That's where we came up with the term flying saucers, because of Kenneth Arnold's sightings. And the US government figured out that the UFOs were hovering around Roswell, that they were interested in our nuclear weapons. And the government, by this time, because of 2 crashes that occurred, one was a place called Cape Girardeau in 1941, just before Pearl Harbor. The other one was apparently the Battle of Los Angeles in early 1942, just after Pearl Harbor. The government knew at its highest levels that we were dealing with extraterrestrials visiting Earth. And remember, the textbook of the time on dealing with extraterrestrials was H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, written just before World War I. And it featured London being leveled just like it was in the Blitz. The government took H.G. Wells' book very seriously. And so did a lot of other people. That's why the broadcast of it one night on Halloween night caused so much of a scare. People were actually afraid of an invasion from outer space. So anyway, the government decided to concentrate all its security resources around Roswell. They didn't tell the people at Roswell Army Air Base because of compartmentalized secrecy. They were left out of the loop. They just said, mind your bombs. Make sure they're locked up at night in the magazines, And I actually talked to the people who were at Roswell when it happened. They were the ones who told me that all the nuclear weapons on Earth were stored there. It was called Roswell Reminiscences. It was a conference held in Washington, D.C. in 1992. So that's where I found out about the nuclear weapons all being at Roswell. So what happened was the U.S. government, according to Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, the government concentrated its security forces around Roswell, but they didn't tell the people at Roswell what was going on. They had no need to know. But what they were doing is they were patrolling at night with the only night fighter we had that was also capable of flying through thunderstorms. That was the P-61 Black Widow night fighter. It had done very well in World War II, shot down a lot of German planes at night and Japanese planes. It had a big radar dish inside the nose that would help it locate targets at night. But the crews were veteran World War II crews. They were patrolling over Roswell the night of, apparently, it was the night and early morning of July 3rd, July 4th. And they had a trick where the Germans and the Japanese in the later part of the war had radar detectors. They could tell when these night fighters were sneaking up on them. So what they would do, what the people in the Black Widows would do, and it was a jet black aircraft, had 20 millimeter cannons on top and a turret with 450 calibers on top. The four 20 millimeter cannons on the bottom of the fuselage and the turret on top. They would get close to within about 5 miles of the target they were hunting, and then they would turn off their radars. and they would use night vision goggles or night vision binoculars. These binoculars with huge lenses to gather a lot of light, and they would do the final intercepts visually. So the targets would not even know that they were descending on them. And apparently they shot down 2 UFOs. Roswell was a shoot down incident. It was the first incident of the US government having to confront the fact that the UFO aliens, the Greys, were interested in our nuclear weapons. We only had our nuclear weapons in one place, and we didn't have very many of them. And so the government reacted very vigorously. Remember, we just ended World War II. People were very trigger happy in those days. And so they shot down 2 UFOs. One of them crashed near Roswell. That's what was the wreckage. And the other one crashed near, limped out of the battle and crashed at a place called the Plains of San Augustine, about 100 miles away. And that was immediately picked up by the Army. The other crash site was not even known by the military until 4 days later when Max Brazel turned in the wreckage that he found. He found fields of wreckage. So one of the ships blew up in midair, which meant it would have disappeared from radar. And they tracked the other one by radar to near Socorro, New Mexico, the Plains of San Augustine. So that set the tone. We have been in a low-level kind of conflict with the Greys militarily ever since then. That's one of the big secrets of the UFOs.
I heard that when, and maybe you can confirm this, that when the craft went down in Roswell,
yeah,
that the American military, when they showed up, they thought the beings were some sort of deformed children from Russia, and they were squawking and very making high-pitched noises like they couldn't talk, and they ended up taking them away and unaliving them, as the new saying is. And then the aliens came back looking for them.
Well, you can imagine if you're in an alien mothership in orbit around the Earth, you send down 2 craft to investigate the most powerful weapons the humans have, and you lose 2 of them in one night. They probably couldn't even believe it at first. I mean, one of the things you've got to get used to is the idea that intelligent beings all kind of process, evolutionary, were made to process information and try and figure out what to do next. And it's quite possible the aliens were so surprised by this, they did not know what to do. So they just left the bodies down there. Or also they could have been afraid that if the government had shot down the 2 craft, that they were waiting an ambush for them if they tried to land to pick up the bodies. That's another possibility. And so, but this got things off on bad foot with the Greys and the U.S. government. The Russians, by the way, had a similar incident where they shot down a UFO near one of their top secret military sites, Kapustin Yar, where they were working on their own nuclear weapons. And they shot it down, I think, about 1948. And they lost the MiG that shot down the UFO was lost, but the Russians didn't care. They just lost 30 million men in 30 million people in World War II. Losing a MiG pilot or 2 didn't bother them at all. Besides, Joseph Stalin was in charge in Russia. Do you think he cares if he loses a few MiG pilots to shoot down a alien craft? Especially if it's snooping around. Here's the story I heard in Washington, D.C. the Russian attitude toward UFOs was anything unidentified flying over the Soviet Union in the early 50s, that era, was probably either an American or British spy plane. So of
Really?
course you shoot it down. So they finally succeeded in shooting down one of these flying saucers, and the Russian troops arrived and got good Russian crowbarskis and pried open the hatch, and they looked inside, and the comment was, "Nie Amerikański." These people are Americans.
That's awesome.
But the Russians didn't care. They were foreigners. Russians have always been paranoid about foreigners. And their history, if you study the history of Russia, you know why. And so basically, the U.S. has been in a kind of Cold War with the Greys ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a brief period. It's possible now to kind of reconstruct a secret history of the UFO cover-up based not only on what was seen publicly, but based on Hollywood movies. Right after there were two movies made after Roswell, the first two big alien movies out of Hollywood. And you must understand, David, that Hollywood was thoroughly part of the U.S. government's propaganda machine during World War II.
Right.
For 4 years. And they took their leaders, they took their prompting from Washington. What movies do you want made? Especially, what movies will you help us get bank loans to produce? So the government could control, basically, by controlling the money, who got to make what movies. So there are two movies that come out in 1951, a couple of years after Roswell. One of them was The Day the Earth Stood Still, which had a human alien in it coming to warn the Earth about the dangers of nuclear weapons. The other movie that came out 4 months later was The Thing from Outer Space, with James Arness playing the Thing. And he plays a blood-sucking, murderous invader from outer space. So you have two views of ETs. One is a very enlightened kind of human person, and the other one is a vegetable man who's here to drink human blood. It also depicted the first human and animal mutilations, and the idea of blood sucking by aliens. That's what came out in 1951, following The Day the Earth Stood Still. So you got two different views of the ETs. And then a couple years later, they made The War of the Worlds. Now, I want you to know something also. The War of the Worlds, when it came out in about 1900, before World War I, was utterly shocking to Victorian England. People complained that it was so horrific. He depicted London being leveled by the Martians. The Martians used heat rays, and they drank human blood, interestingly enough. And they look like octopi, interestingly enough. Now, I happen to believe, by the way, that the human race is inherently psychic, that we know stuff, especially as you see it in science fiction. We know stuff before we should be able to know it. For instance, one of my favorite examples is Jonathan Swift wrote Gulliver's Travels, where he visited the city flying in space. And there they had astronomers who had such good telescopes they could tell that Mars had two moons orbiting it. That was not actually, that was written in 1726. It wasn't actually found till 1890 that Mars actually had 2 moons. Yet it was in Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift before anybody could have known that. Another thing where fiction was prophetic was a novel called Futility, written in about 1887. It depicts this great big ocean liner full of rich people on its maiden voyage, sailing across the Atlantic from Britain to the United States. It runs into an iceberg and sinks, killing almost everyone on board. And it was called, the ocean liner was called the Titan in this novel. Its measurements were almost exactly what the Titanic was when they built the Titanic 12 years later. And it, of course, did the Titanic disaster. Yet this guy had written this book describing everything in detail before it happened by 12 years. So the human race knows things it shouldn't be able to know. Like, for instance, Dave, you knew how to put together this show. There.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for explaining that. We got about 3 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Dr. John Brandenburg is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Short answer here.
Short. Okay.
What do you think that ETs have been coming here for millennia and helped us build this planet and humanity?
Oh, I'm convinced there was past ET contact with human civilization. I don't know how much of that occurred. Some of this stuff we just were very clever and invented ourselves, but we could have had some prompting. So I guess my answer is a little bit wishy-washy. I think the human race in ancient times was a lot smarter than people think it was. And also, since we live in a universe full of ETs, it's quite possible some of them visited here. It's even in the Bible. But that's a longer topic we'll discuss after the break.
Do you think that there is danger deep inside covering this story?
Oh, yeah. Hey, it's dangerous to live in a democracy. Your democracy could end anytime. In Russia, if you start investigating UFOs, they'd send you to a labor camp. This country, they just ridicule you. Like I wrote my novel, Cosmic Awakening. A lot of people read it and liked it. But the only review that Amazon will post is a negative one. Go figure. Other friends of mine who have read it and liked it, tried to post their reviews, they were blocked. So somebody doesn't like my novel, my book, Cosmic Awakening. Somebody doesn't like it and has let me know it. And there has also been several people in the UFO field who have died under mysterious circumstances, and the claim was always that these were suicides. And this is a terrible thing. But I happen to know that this is such a deep national secret that certain agencies have a lethal force authorization to preserve these secrets. So
we're gonna get into that a little bit more, because in the next hour I want to ask you about somebody who you know and who's been studied quite a bit lately, in Amy Eskridge, scientist who.
Amy, I met Amy Eskridge.
Hold that thought.
I was devastated to hear that she died supposedly from a suicide. her
Hold
laundry
that
was
thought,
in the
because
dryer.
we have to get into that, John. We
Yeah.
have to get into that next on Spaced Out Radio, because that's an important story. If these scientists,
Yes.
brilliant people, are disappearing because of the UFO story, we need to talk about it.
Yeah, we do.
Dr. John Brandenburg on Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Everybody, stay tuned. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, Doc. I'm just going to take a quick break here. I'm going to put you back in the green room. We got 6 minutes, okay?
All right.
All right, be right back.
I'll go do what I need to do.
All right, I'll be right back. I almost did not come back in because the northern lights are dancing all
No
over.
kidding. Where do you live?
I'm in central British Columbia.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're supposed to see him even as far south as I've already seen him this year in Oregon.
We've
I mean,
had
they
the
weren't.
here probably, oh goodness, 5 times in the last couple weeks.
Yep.
It's awesome. Go outside, guys. If you can bring, if you're listening on your phone, go outside and look if you have the opportunity to. It's an amazing show going on right now.
Hey, it's plasmas. Plasmas. That's what I do for a living.
Plasma, man.
Plasma.
All right. Thank you to Louis and Richard for our great super chats. And we're going to get going here in about 5 seconds, everybody.
Sure.
I can't take pics. Hello and welcome to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. UFOs, scientists, space, aliens. Dr. John Brandenburg is our guest. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. If you got to see the northern lights outside, make sure you do. If you got that opportunity, you could take the drive out of the city if you're listening and just go look north. Oh, I almost didn't come back into the studio after the break because the northern lights are dancing right over SOR headquarters, like literally right over top. It's one of those beautiful images that you can just get lost in. It really is. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in. And we say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Aurora Borealis. Aurora Borealis is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. We have Dr. John Brandenburg, and right before the break, Doc, you brought up an important point that due to the sensitivity of this UFO subject and what is really out there hiding in space, whether it's Mars or on the moon, that good, brilliant scientists, some of the most brilliant minds, have been erased from humanity. We were just talking about
Yes.
Dr. Amy Eskridge, and you knew her.
I had the great pleasure and honor of sitting down and talking with her at two different scientific conferences. She was a lovely young woman and just brilliant. And before her death, she was talking about that she had discovered a big secret involving UFO propulsion. She also, according to the version I heard, said that people had told her to be quiet about it and that she wasn't going to listen to them. And then suddenly she ended up dead with what reportedly was a single 22 bullet round through the top of her head. And this was ruled a suicide. Her body was immediately cremated, so there couldn't be an autopsy, basically. And the circumstances of her death was that she was at her parents' house doing her laundry. She had laundry in the dryer, drying, and then was found in a field near her parents' house. She was there by herself, and she was dead from a single bullet through the head. And where I was working, we were just horrified and devastated to hear this. She was such a lovely person and so smart and young and bright. And but we kind of got the message: don't investigate. You know,
Did you get that message?
we got that message. Yeah, don't investigate. Don't try and find out what happened.
Who told you that?
My bosses were trying to investigate, and
Gotcha.
yeah, they wouldn't tell me who their contacts were. All they just said was we were told not to lose all curiosity about her death. And so there are things going on here that are deadly serious. Now, I'm just an Episcopalian, but when God says vengeance is mine, he's not just kidding around. She will be avenged sevenfold. Any of you who are listening who were involved in her death or know the details about it should remember that God knows everything. People who have me under surveillance. I've been under surveillance ever since I got interested in Mars, but the people who are surveilling me and probably listening into this program, taking notes, should remember that God has you under surveillance himself. I have been told, by the way, that I will be avenged 70-fold if anything happens to me or my family because of this. But at the same time, I consider myself still part of the national security establishment of the United States. And I understand that the public needs to be brought up to speed. They need to be acclimated to the idea, first, that we're not alone in the universe, there's life elsewhere. And then they need to talk about, we jokingly refer to this, by the way, as the dance of the seven veils. First thing that gets, first veil that gets dropped is no, there's life on other planets. And then, but these are planets far, far away, and the life was a long time ago, far removed in space and time. They're finding more and more evidence for life in the past on Mars, and they're finding evidence for life on other planets. They have biosignatures in the infrared spectra picked up by the James Webb Telescope. So they're going to start acclimating the public to the fact that there is life on other planets. But those will be instances that were far removed in space or time from us. Then they'll discover, we found life closer, like in the clouds of Jupiter. The Great Red Spot is actually a big cesspool of bacteria. They'll find that out. They'll probably release that. So then they'll start moving the life closer, and then they'll talk about, and I'm sure they have a whole list of radio signals they've already picked up from other planets indicating intelligent life. They'll go through a step-by-step disclosure as the different veils are dropped by the dancer, and finally full disclosure will happen. Now, everybody wants disclosure to happen, but and we're impatient to do that. But at the same time, I realize, even from talking to some members of my own family, that some people are just not prepared for this. They're not prepared emotionally or intellectually for the idea that, gosh, people from outer space are visiting here, and the whole sordid truth is they're mutilating cattle and kidnapping people, and occasionally there are battles in the sky between our air forces and these people. And when you tell them all of that, they just change the subject. They can't. The implications are so scary that they just can't handle it. And I understand that. So I understand. I see both sides of the question. I think disclosure must happen, but it must be a systematic, step-by-step process. And when I first found out about the UFO cover-up, I was in Washington, D.C., and people talked to me about stuff because I knew they were aware of my Mars work. And finally, I asked a colonel in the there was one colonel who was Army colonel who was very interested in the Mars findings, and he worked at the Joint Chief of Staff's level in the Pentagon. And I found out more and more about the UFO cover-up. And finally, I just asked him, I used the code words that I knew the military would use. Is there an extraterrestrial threat whose existence is classified? And he said, yes. Then he added, he says, there is a UFO cover-up. He says, I wish I could tell you more, but you could figure out the rest for yourself with what's in the open literature. You can.
Getting back to Amy Estridge here for a second.
Yes.
Have
So
other
sad.
scientists ever been warned about their safety regarding what they know or what they've discovered?
I have. I've never been warned about my safety. I've been warned about my employment. Brandenburg, if you want to work here, you can't talk about UFOs anymore or be interested in them. Yes, sir. Please sign my paycheck, etc. I have been, I've been told that Brandenburg, shut up about the UFO stuff. I was part of the Clementine Mission to the moon. I didn't see anything in the pictures, but the pictures we only saw one picture in 1,000 coming down from the moon, just enough to know the cameras were operating right. And when I tried to talk about that mission after 20 years, thinking it was fine to talk about it, I got I got my head chewed off on the phone by two people I knew and respected from that mission. And they told me not to talk in any detail about it anymore. So I have been warned. But I have also been given clearance to talk about certain things. Gravity modification for one of them, that you can do in lab or just in your garage. Tiny amounts of gravity modification for like an experiment that costs about $200. And I'm about to, I've discussed that in it's what's called the APEC conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be going to a regular scientific conference to talk about that, God willing, by the end of the month, to present that at just a formal scientific conference. And what I've also been free to talk about is Mars. I was basically encouraged to talk about what we found out on Mars, including the nuclear holocaust. I was also granted license to write about the whole UFO situation, but in a science fiction scenario. I took everything I had learned or inferred from what I'd heard in Washington, D.C., and put it in a novel called Morningstar Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. And I had been in Washington, D.C., working for 15 years with the Department of Defense and the intel agencies on space problems. And I heard a lot of interesting things around the coffee machine and in the hall. So I mentioned at a farewell luncheon to some of my superiors that from some of the agencies that, gee, I would really want to write a science fiction novel about this. And it would be okay if I used some of the stuff that I heard. And to my great surprise, they said, sure. We loved your reports. You know, the words were, we loved your reports. Why don't you write that science fiction novel and we'll read it. But just, and they repeated this, just to make sure it's labeled science fiction. So I said, sure. So I wrote the novel and published it. Morningstar Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. We're currently we need, you know, we're launching a movie project to turn it into a movie. There's a music video called Morningstar Pass. I think it's called short version. It's a 4-minute video where you can see it set to some rock music. You know, it's anyway, so you can see what the basic plot of the book is. Two beautiful women bring down the UFO cover-up. One's this, they're both news anchors, so they're very glamorous. And one is an Asian American, and she grew up in San Diego, went to UCLA, and you know, her career has been pretty much easy for her. And then her friend is this blonde, cute blonde from Cleveland, grew up in Cleveland, and started out as a weather girl. And her education was at Cuyahoga Community College. I mean, she has what she calls 2-year paper. so they and those two bring down the UFO cover-up, and the head of the UFO cover-up dismisses what they're doing at first. He says nobody's going to pay any attention to those two bimbos. 6 months later, he's dead, and his entire cover-up organization is utterly destroyed. So, if you want to know what happens, got to read the book.
You mentioned a colonel as you were describing everything, but you didn't give his name. Which colonel was that?
Oh, I can't remember his name, and he retired shortly after talking with me. He said, he says, yes, there is an extraterrestrial threat whose existence is classified. Remember, this is when Reagan was talking about threats from outer space. Leading to, and the Cold War then stopped shortly thereafter. So he says, yes, there is an extraterrestrial threat whose existence is classified. And then he basically just said, yes, there is a UFO cover-up. He says, but I can't talk about it anymore, and I'm retiring next week. So don't, he said, the rest you can figure out for yourself, he said. Like any idiot can figure out. If once you know that one basic fact, there is a UFO cover-up, the government knows we're being visited by extraterrestrials, you can figure out everything else from what's in the open literature. At least you can come up with a rough estimate, what's called in the military, an estimate of the situation. Now,
how many people?
I'm sorry.
Sorry to cut you off there. How many people do you think are in the know?
Oh, well, your audience is kind of 90% of the know. We don't know all of the details, but we know the basic facts, I think. People are listening to this program. We are the elite cadre intellectually of the human race. And by the way, I know sometimes this is difficult, but you should periodically bring this up to your friends and family members that there is a UFO cover-up and it's going to end. in a while, and we should get ready. And not everything is pleasant. I summarize it this way. We're not alone in the universe. We're not the first species that has developed space travel in the universe. And not everybody out there is nice. There. Not only are the Vulcans out there, but so are the Klingons. All right?
Right.
The Earth
I
is,
get that. I
the
get
Earth
that.
is,
I can appreciate that.
right. I put it this way. The Earth is not an aberration. Earth and its people are not an aberration on the cosmos. We are part of its fabric. It means there's just like there's good and evil on Earth and lots of conflict. There's lots of conflict out in outer space and good and evil out there also.
Thoughts on time travel? Are we doing it?
You know, as a scientist, I don't normally ever like to say something is impossible because I know that we don't know a lot. We know a lot of things about the universe, but there's so much we don't know. 90% of the mass in the universe is some of the substance that we don't know what it is. Dark matter. I joked on one program like this. I said, dark matter is like Washington, D.C. The stuff that makes everything move the way it does, you can't see. All you see is the pretty lights. It's like you're looking at the lights of a Christmas tree, but you can't see the tree itself that's holding it up. You just see the Christmas lights. And that's the way the universe is. There's so much that's hidden. Now, to me, time is part of the second law of thermodynamics. And the best example of the flow of time is the expansion of the universe. The galaxies are all flying apart. So it's hard to imagine that you could make time go backwards because it would you'd have to reverse all of the galaxies in the cosmos. But there may be a simple way to do it. However, I don't know anything about, for this time being, I'm just going to assume that time travel is something that you can't really do. Or if you do it, there are so many prices that you have to pay that you can't go back and retake that exam in high school that you failed. Now, wouldn't we all love to do that?
What about the secret space program? Do you believe in that?
Oh, of course. Of course. There's so many secrets. And that, you know, part of governments is all governments, and you're from British Columbia.
Yes.
Both the United States and Canada learned everything we need to know about how to run a government from Great Britain. And you don't think the British government knows how to run secret programs and have secret government? Of course they do. Ever since Queen Elizabeth.
Let's hold that
thought. What's that?
Let's hold that thought because we do have to catch up on a break here at the bottom of the hour. We have Dr. John Brandenburg until the top of the hour. You know what? Way too much information, way too little time.
Right back. You can have me back if you like.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear.
You know, as soon as this show is over, I'm going to get in my car and race out to some dark area that I know near town and see if I can see the Northern Lights.
You should.
I've seen them before and I just loved them. I was out necking with my fiance in college, and suddenly the aurora borealis was visible. We were at a local lovers lane, where it was really dark, and we were all looking to see, and suddenly you see all these UFOs, not UFO stuff. It's just aurora borealis, and we watched it for like a half hour, and then I drove home. My parents were both sitting there, and my fiance and I walked in and said, the Northern Lights are out. And my father looked up from his coffee and said, nonsense. So I didn't know what to say. So I just said, okay, well, they're out there if you want to go see them. Anyway, I got to take, her name was Faye. I ended up marrying her. We have one beautiful daughter and 2 grandchildren from that. And I took her home. Then I sat out in the driveway and just watched the aurora borealis for about an hour. And I went inside. My parents had gone to bed, and they'd never come out and watched it. Just because my father was in a grumpy mood. Balderdash, he says. So anyway, but no, they're absolutely stunning. I saw them earlier this summer, but all you could really see was just pink and blue glows that would flicker. There would be a flicker of pink and then a flicker of blue, and they would kind of glow for a while and then change. And you didn't really see much structure to it. It was just light in the northern horizon.
It's a beautiful thing, man.
Oh, it is. Hey, you're talking about the Earth's magnetic field intercepting blasts of plasma from the sun and it lighting up the atmosphere, and making this glowing plasma. And I'm a plasma physicist. That's my training. And I just love it. I love lightning, good lightning storms and aurora and neon signs and things like that. So those are all plasmas. And that's the way we're going to harness fusion too, is with plasma.
It's one of Earth's beautiful things.
Yes, it is. Well, most of the matter in the universe is in the plasma state. All the stars, the sun, and all the stars are all plasmas, and there's a thin plasma throughout the galaxies. And it's basically a gas of just positive and negative charges. Mostly hydrogen. Almost all of it's hydrogen, and it's just. I'm driving around town here in Oregon, and the leaves are starting to turn. And there was this one just beautiful tree I passed on the way between the center of town to where I live, and just beautiful scarlet leaves. And I thought, what a festival of colors, we're starting to see. And it's like God designed the universe so it'd be really pretty and give some great displays.
Very true. Very true.
That's why I'm an optimist. I'm just an Episcopalian, but I still believe God's looking out for us.
Me too.
That's the reason we're still here. God's looking out for us. And he's the great ET. I tell people, you want to talk to an ET, talk to God. He's always listening.
Sometimes I wish he would answer back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we all, yeah. But he's, as Einstein said, God is subtle, but he is not malicious.
Very true. Very true. Hold on right there, because we're going to come back here in about 15 seconds Thank
All
you
right.
to Simon, Forrest Louie, and Richard for the great super chats. Greatly appreciate the love. Thank you, Cat Chaser. Thank you, Deborah Rooney. Thank you, JSCO. Very much appreciate the love. And here we go. Second half of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We have until the top of the hour. Dr. John Brandenburg is here. The name of your book is?
Cosmic Awakening.
Oh, yeah.
What really happened, that subtitle is What Really Happened at Roswell and the Genesis of the UFO Cover-Up.
We haven't even touched on that yet. We got so much more to touch on. You know what I'm going to do, John? I'm going to get Dirty Filth, our booking guy, Dirty, to reach out to you and get you on for November again.
David, I would love to be,
Oh, I would love that.
Being as you guys are in Canada, you're a little bit, you have the benefit of being slightly removed from the great dramas here in this country.
Oh, we have our own.
I know you do.
We have to. We're supposed to call him Dear Leader.
Oh, that's your dear leader. Yeah, we understand about your dear leader who always seems to be. He seems to be president for life or something.
Oh, let's hope not.
Well, in my, many Americans look on Canada as what the United States could have been if we'd run things in a more tidy and orderly manner in this country. My father explained once, he said, there was no Wild West in Canada, he said, because the first people to arrive in the wilderness in Canada when it was getting settled was the Mounties. And the Mounties made sure that everything ran properly. And, of course, in the United States, it was all, the Wild West was literally the Wild West. There was very little law and order. And a lot of the Confederate Army, after they lost the Civil War, went out west and became bandits, and and everybody had guns after the Civil War, and it was a mess. Now, it's my understanding also, though, that Canada's history is not quite as staid and smooth as you Canadians like to represent. I understand that.
No, it's a little rough here. We all have.
I know that
skeletons in the closet.
What's that?
We all have our skeletons in the closet.
Well, let me tell you something. All Americans who know their history know that the Canadian Army units fought with great bravery and distinction during World War II, right along the British and the Americans. And you guys have always been great allies, and we appreciate that.
Oh, we love you too.
But I got so tired of getting lectured by some Canadian colleagues that I'd had that when I wrote my novel there's a prequel to the UFO cover-up. It's about these same two women characters. It's how they got famous. You think, well, why would anybody from the government leak all this secret UFO stuff to these two women? so they could bring down the UFO cover-up. Well, it's because they got famous, because they figured out that there was this asteroid that NASA, was kind of announced as a discovery, and then NASA quit talking about it. And they gradually figured out it wasn't just going to fly by the Earth, it was going to hit it. And the government was desperately trying to stop it and didn't want anybody to know about it. And so the government was caught between, trying to make this problem go away quietly, kind of stitch in nine saves nine, kind of stitch in time saves nine kind of approach. And the fact that the asteroid turned out to be far bigger and far more dangerous than they thought it was. They thought they could just easily. So anyway, so in the middle of this, the human race figures out psychically, the human race is psychic. It figures out that doomsday is approaching, even though it doesn't say so consciously. And it's like the public doesn't know. The governments are keeping this knowledge from the public so they won't panic. But the problem is the governments panic. And one of the things that happens in my novel is Quebec decides to secede from Canada in the middle of this mounting crisis. And I won't go into further details. Obviously, this is something Canadians don't like to discuss. So,
if they ever decided to separate, they have to change their beloved hockey team's name, and that's going to screw them right up. So,
what is their beloved hockey team?
Les Canadiens du Montréal.
They're the Canadiens. Okay. Well, I did a little research into. Yeah, but anyway, I did a little research into Canadian history, and I discovered what Canadians don't like to talk about. So that's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I want to ask you about the Aviary.
The Aviary, I was kind of part of the Aviary. I mean, nobody gave me a membership card, but suddenly I found myself in this chat group on the internet. And I realized, oh my God, this is the Aviary. I've been kind of put into it. It was because of my Mars work. So I was put in there, and one guy was actually inducted into the Aviary. He didn't really realize it was the Aviary. And he says, I'm not part of the Aviary. I don't even believe such a thing exists. And I wrote him an email. And I said, tweet for yourself. You're part of the Aviary. And so it was basically a discussion group set up by one of our alphabet soup of intelligence agencies, apparently, to basically monitor what everyone was. It was a listening post, basically, what was going on in the UFO field. And it was a way they had of monitoring things. And, this is a long running soap opera of, involving disinformation, misinformation, disinformation, or just, there's information that is just wrong. And that always gets into the intelligence arena. And then there is disinformation, which some people are spreading. And sometimes the right, and because of compartmentalized secrecy and the fact that the different agencies involved in the UFO cover-up don't share knowledge amongst each other, the right hand knoweth not what the left is doing, and sometimes arms wrestles with it. Right now, we have a situation in the United States where we have a Mars cover-up, we have a UFO cover-up, we have apparently a lunar cover-up, which I'm not supposed to talk about, so I won't. And we have those are kind of the major cover-ups going on. And we have factions within the US government that want the UFO cover-up to continue forever, basically, till doomsday. Then we have another faction that wants it to end and is moving aggressively to end it. And time is on their side because the public wants to know. But they're basically doing this dance of the seven veils to try and bring people up to speed and acclimate themselves to the world of Star Trek. Now, the good thing is, as near as I can tell, my own estimate of the situation is we have kindred out there in the stars that are basically just human beings. In fact, I got to tell you that this is the craziest story, and I only heard it about a month ago. And
Okay.
it's just crazy. It's just crazy enough to be true. And I realize we're running out of time. I'll make it quick. Imagine that these Pleiadian people who look just like us, and they walk around on the street, you'd never notice them. In fact, I heard in Washington, D.C., they were concerned, they considered them a security risk because they couldn't tell them from terrestrial human beings. And they even got desperate enough to ask me if I had any ideas at one point. And I said, you sniffer dogs. They should, they can tell people apart. They ought to be able, individual people apart. They ought to be able to tell people from outer space. And the guy who asked me this question, his face just lit up and he says, that's a good idea. I'm sitting in my office and he just walks into my office and asks me this question. So then he disappears. A week later, he comes back to my office. It's this classified facility. This is a serious professional guy, well respected in the organization I was working for as a consultant. He says, I told that to the people I've been talking to about the sniffer dog thing, and they really like the idea and they're going to try it. Now, that was in 1992.
Nice.
So there are people, it is widely reported, there are people flying starships out there that look just like Captain Kirk, a Canadian, and the rest of the human race. They're out there flying spaceships. And then, of course, there's the little short gray guys. And those are the people that our government doesn't get along with. And the people who look just like us, we don't entirely trust them either because they look like us, right? We don't trust any human beings, much less somebody who's a little short gray guy. So, but here's the story I heard. The US government finally has developed kind of a de facto alliance with these people from the Pleiades, the people who look like us, who like us. And they had some of them out at Site 51, the top secret place in the Nevada desert near Las Vegas. And two of them were females. And they're out in the middle of the desert, surrounded by barbed wire and desert and cactus, and they can see the lights of Las Vegas over the mountains as a dome of light every night. And they started pestering their human, their American hosts. They were there for some technology transfer program. They started pestering their American hosts that they wanted to go to Vegas. And so the government people, after a lot of consultations, got them human women clothing, some nice outfits, and escorted them to Vegas for a day so they could go visit the casinos and take in some shows. Then they brought them back to Site 51, and they were happy. And
You buy that?
I thought, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. And yet, if you can think of, if human race is super terrestrial, that means their psychology is the same as ours. And sure, they'd get tired of being cooped up on this military reservation on Earth, and they see this bright city in the distance. They want to go see it. So they let them. Now, are you happy? Fortunately, then they got them sent home. After that,
I heard about that. I
you
believe
heard
it was.
about it?
Yeah, wasn't it like the Sahara they used to hang out in?
So you heard it too. When did you hear this?
Probably 8-9 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So I only heard that this summer. And I thought, that's the craziest ass story I've ever heard. But then I realized, no, it makes perfect sense. It means our friends from the Pleiades and us are actually getting to know each other pretty well.
Them aliens, they like to party. Let me tell you that.
What?
Them aliens, they love to party.
I've heard that. Yes, the Pleiadians are fairly party hardy bunch. They're just human beings basically, but they fly starships, and they're not afraid of the Greys. They're enemies of the Greys. They're here to help us, by the way. And
Right.
so if this is true, we've gotten through the worst of this. We're being brought along. There's a historic precedent on Earth. Japan. The Spanish, conquered Mexico and South America. Then they built ships and they sailed across the Pacific and landed in the Philippines, and they conquered the Philippines. It took them about 2 years. But the Philippines, there wasn't much gold there. There wasn't, compared to Mexico with the Aztecs, it was nothing. But then the Spanish, they hear about this fabulous civilization with big cities and beautiful women wearing silks and streets paved with gold up to the north called Japan. So the Spanish loaded up their conquistadors in a bunch of ships and went up to see if they could conquer Japan. And waiting for them on the beach was the samurai. I'm not kidding. It was like the movie Shogun.
Right.
It was like the movie Shogun. And the Spanish saw the samurai lined up on the beach. They had steel swords. Some of them were on horseback. They had horses. And the Spanish, who are, in full armor, getting ready to get into their boats to come down and sail over to the beach and plant the flag, claiming it for the King of Spain and the Pope. They realized, oh, this is not Mexico here. And then suddenly came marching up samurai with muskets. They had gunpowder and knew how to use it. As it turns out, the Portuguese, who were actually enemies of the Spanish at the time, had sold the Japanese the technology to build muskets and to make gunpowder 5 years earlier. And there's a letter from the Spanish governor in the Philippines to the King of Spain that says, the Japanese are the most difficult people to deal with around here. They're very violent, he says. And he said, and the damn Portuguese have sold them gunpowder. Making things, and God will get the Portuguese for this, he says. So they couldn't conquer Japan. So Japan Japan withdrew and became a hermit kingdom. And then the United States sailed a fleet over one day and said, you're going to start opening trade with us because we're losing sailors on shipwrecks and we can't get our sailors back because you're a hermit kingdom. So Japan opened up to the world, and the Japanese figured out there was the rest of the world. And so they sent their best, they were highly educated elite. They sent their very best people to Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard to learn all about Western civilization and technology. And they brought in a bunch of technological experts. So pretty soon they had steam trains, steamships with good cannons on them. And they became, in 30 years, a very modern state for those times. And that's what we're going to do. Now, of course, Japan got in trouble later because it became imperialistic. But in terms of adjusting their society to the new greater world they found themselves in, that is our model for how the human race is going to adjust itself to being part of the living cosmos. And we're going to get inducted into the Federation, the Cosmic Federation. That's what I believe. So I discussed that in my book on Cosmic Awakening.
4 minutes to go before we have to say goodnight to you tonight, Dr. John Brandenburg. And out of anything that you want the UFO community to know, what is it? What should they be watching for in the near future? Do you think something big is going to happen at this hearing coming up in November? Do you think it's going to be Immaculate Constellation, and we're going to hear more about that? What's the big news coming up?
Well, I think there will be a slow drip drab of information. There may be some pictures of alien autopsies circulating, and but they're going to slowly. What they're going to do, NASA is going to discover life on Mars or something. That's what I think is going to happen. And so suddenly people will realize we're not alone in the universe. And by the way, one of your questioners was asking, are there peer-reviewed journal articles about the nuclear holocaust on Mars? Yes. I published it in Europe, and it got a lot of readership, and there's been no blowback. No one has come out and said, Brandenburg doesn't know what he's talking about, because I spent 9.5 years in nuclear weapons labs. I'm sorry. So what I think is going to happen next is they're going to discover bacterial life on Mars. That's what I think was going to happen.
That doesn't sound exciting to us laymen.
Think about its implications. And it is exciting. Especially because the government has known about it since 1976. The government has been sitting on this information since 1976. When they did life experiments on Mars, you know why they never have repeated those experiments? Because they already know the answer. So yeah, they're gonna. I believe what they're gonna do is they're gonna announce the discovery of bacterial life on Mars. And then people will say, "Oh well, that could have spread from Earth," something like that. Then they'll discover biosigns, clear biosigns on another planet in another star system, and they'll realize, oh no. If you find life on Mars, it's in the stars, friends. But I believe that is where it's going to happen. And no, David, they will release that because it's not exciting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They don't want people to get excited. They want people to be calm and not sell their stocks, stuff like that.
It's going to be interesting to see what plays out. We have about, let me check here, 45 seconds. Tell everybody where they can find your book.
Amazon.com. Cosmic Awakening by John Brandenburg. What really happened at Roswell and the genesis of the UFO cover-up. And it's a book about the cosmic destiny of the human race, which I believe is very good. We're going to do fine.
I'm going to get our booking agent to make sure that you are rebooked for some time next month.
All right. I'd love to be back on your show.
Love it. Love it. And thank you.
I love your guests' very intelligent questions.
Thank you for being here tonight. Very much appreciate everything about you there. And coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, we head to the swamp. Then Robin will join us. Dave 101 night and the weird news of the week, all coming up next.
Hey, and I'm headed out the doors to see if I can see the Northern Lights.
To Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, John, thank you very much, my man. Go enjoy the Northern Lights.
It's a pleasure and honor being on your show, and I loved your questions you were getting from your audience.
Beautiful. We're going to do this.
There were no wiseacres in your audience.
No, I don't allow that.
Good.
All right, boss.
All right. Enjoy the Northern Lights, you guys up there north of the north of North Dakota.
See you later, John.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. John Brandenburg, everybody. What an awesome, awesome dude. We got to bring him back soon. Soon. I'll be right back. I'm going to check on the Northern Lights. right, I'll do my best here. This is what's outside the studio right now. I don't know if you can see that properly. And that one's blurry. This one's really cool. Yeah. I'm going out after the show. Thank you, Louis, Richard, Simon, JSCO, Cat Chaser, Deborah Rooney, Dialogue, and Aloha Dave for the amazing super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. Robin Haynes coming up here momentarily. And we'll be right going here in 3 seconds. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Aurora Borealis. Aurora Borealis is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I was going into my senior year in high school. The summer was not quite over yet, and I had a few weeks before, and it was back to tedious task all day. I had a few hours to burn waiting for a girl I was seeing to get back from a party. It was somewhere around 11 at night. I decided to drive back to an old spot in the woods about 20 minutes from the girl's house. This had been a spot where my great uncle had taken me fishing as a kid. Since his passing 2 years prior, I have only been out to this spot a few times. In the lake sat an old cemetery with graves marked from the 1700s. George Washington's drummer happened to be buried at the foot of the lake. Other graves marked the passing of entire families from diseases like typhoid fever. Some graves were not legible after centuries of weathering. This place always had a distinct feeling to it. It was often hushed and felt desolate. As my friends would say, I'm a crazy guy. So I decided to take my green Tacoma out on the road alone in the middle of the night. I had my truck rigged for off-roading, so the long drive on a gravel road heading for the spot was no problem. Potholes and sharp turns usually keep too many guests out of this area. Tucked behind miles of woods was a cemetery overlooking an old reservoir used for drinking water in many surrounding towns. The woods, they looked like they were in the middle of the wilderness here. Giant pines covered most of the shores of the crystal-clear lake. This was a pretty lonely spot, so I felt excited to get here and spend some time alone. I wanted to reminisce on old memories of catching big bass and spending days on the water with my great uncle. This kind of adventure was typical for me. I would ride my bike 20 miles a day as a kid out to fishing spots in the middle of nowhere. I am pretty tough to shake. I'm not Iron Man by any means, but I'm also not scared of a twig snapping or something of that like. I've always been the kind of guy who would step in when things start to hit the fan and get things done. I've carried friends who have had broken legs with bones through the skin, rushed heart attack victims to the ER, and all sorts of gruesome stuff. But none of that really ever bothered me. Soon, this unshakable attitude would change. I decided to drive down to the lake's edge and sit with my windows down. The sounds of the frogs and crickets were the only sounds of the night. All was well. I checked the time out of good cell service and decided to head back. My road home started with a steep gravel road through the mountains. I put on my high beams to spot deer and climbed up the hill in my truck. I looked ahead at some trees, smaller in diameter and tightly packed together. They littered my view. A flash darting through the gaps in the trees caught my attention. I spotted what looked like a pale figure, no more than 4 feet tall if I had to guess, very skinny and very fast. Still, miles away from the nearest house or gas station, the mood turns from a fun trip down memory lane to a feeling that I told myself I would never forget. I don't know what I saw. I didn't see any prominent features, but rather I just saw a pale gray figure whipping between the trees at inhuman speeds. I am open-minded when it comes to cryptids now. I don't know what kind of cryptid this could have been, if any at all. I didn't want to stick around to find out, though. My truck fishtailed as I peeled out down the gravel road, drifting every corner. I didn't realize I was crying until I exited the woods. If I can say anything, they're just horrifying. What was it that I saw? If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments.
Thank you to Swamp Dweller for another great story tonight, because we love it when he is here. And of course, you can find more stories just like that by going to youtube.com// Swamp Dweller Reads. Here's Robin. Robin Haynes, it's good to see you back for a second time this week. How are you?
I am good. I know, I'm excited. Twice in 1 week. It's awesome. I love it here.
It is awesome. Thank you for coming on once again.
No problem. Thank you. So I don't know about anybody else, but the Sasquatch are active. They're like hopping all over the place, getting lots of calls from lots of people on getting mind speak from them.
What are they saying?
It seems to be not anything specific other than getting them to acknowledge them, whether it's to tell them to come outside or coming to them in dream state. I mean, there's definitely some communication going on. A lot of people, it's new for them because this is something they haven't experienced before. So, they're a little unclear as to why. I mean, it's really more than just the time of year that we're at. This whole frequency shift, and everybody's frequencies, or not everybody's, but a lot of people's frequency is coming up, and they're trying to make more contact with the people with the higher frequencies. So, I mean, people might be getting a lot of contact through dream state, which, people just think that when you go to sleep, you're just asleep. It doesn't quite work like that. Our physical bodies are the house for our souls and our consciousness. Okay. They need food, they need sleep, they need water, but they're just a holding cell for our consciousness. And our consciousness and our soul does not sleep. So it's up and it's active all night long. When you go into dream state, you're just gone to a different plane. You can get hurt there. You can have, be happy, sad, whatever, but it is a separate plane. So when they come to you in dream state, it's a safe way for them to communicate with you, because then they're not right in front of you where they could get hurt and you could get hurt. And it's supposed to be a way to ease contact in a less frightening manner. And I'm getting a lot of calls with people that are getting them in dream state and are going down the road, or just, walking around in their backyard, or doing something very insignificant that they're not thinking about them. They're not that familiar with them, and they are getting the mind speak. Okay, it's important to remember mind speak comes in various forms. It's not just words in your head. It can be a thought, a feeling, an emotion that is not your own. It can be a sense of knowing. Most of us get mind speak. Even the people that don't believe it can get it. But if you don't recognize what it is, then you don't realize you're getting it.
How do we know when we are receiving mind speak?
Well, it comes down to any type of a thought, a feeling, an emotion, a knowing, anything that is not your own, where it kind of startles you and it's like, okay, that didn't come from me. Why do I know this? You know, why? I don't understand why I would know this whole situation when I've never been here before. You know, it's not impossible to get the words and hear the voices in your mind at all. You can get letters, you can get a picture, an image, something that plays like a movie. All of those are forms of mind speak. And the word telepathy and mind speak is very misleading because it keeps it where we don't realize how vast it really is. And anybody can get it a number of different ways, or maybe, you know, just one way. But there is a large variety, so we miss a lot of it. Most of us have been doing it their whole life and don't realize it, whether it's been with another person, whether it's been with an animal, a cryptid, or whatever. It's just you don't realize what it is because it's very misleading, the terminology for it.
You mentioned that it could be pictures, it could be sounds, it could be
Mhm.
sentences, it could be anything. When we get that, how do we know it's not imagination?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and I wish there was a clear-cut way to tell you. I mean, you really don't. If you question yourself, you convince yourself that it's your imagination. And I think learning that it's not comes with experience and time and having it happen over and over again. Also, your body reads energy. It's a great lie detector. And if I were Dave to say to you that there is a hippo with purple spots and a necktie floating above your head, your body's going to feel kind of like in a weird place. But if I say to you, Dave, you're sitting there and you're doing your radio show, it's a completely different feeling because the energy in your body can tell you what's real and what isn't. And it's the same thing when it comes to mind speak. So when you get it, your body is going to react to it. That will help you, and it takes time to do it, to realize that that's the real thing. There's a disconnect that comes from your body and the energy in it until it goes to your brain. So like if you were to walk by somebody and get a bad vibe off of them, it's because your body's already recognizing that energy. It's just like when you were in school, there was always that one person that you didn't know them, you never did anything to them, but they were horrible to you and you couldn't figure out why. It's because you have a positive energy, they have a negative energy. And the negative likes to bring down the positive. That's why they reacted the way they did. So your body's a really good lie detector. So when you're getting this mind speak, even though you may doubt yourself, the energy and the frequency in your body knows the truth. So it feels a little bit different than if I were going to go up and make a blatant lie to you. You would feel that it feels off or it feels different, like it doesn't really fit or jive well. And it's the same thing with the mind speak. You get it. And I think we all in the beginning of mind speak question it, you know, and say, I know I didn't get what I get. But it comes with having confidence in yourself. It comes with feeling that energy from getting that mind speak and having it happen enough where it makes us open our minds to the fact that this really is happening. You know, I mean, I had a female, I was in my house one day and she was outside in the back and somebody had walked around in my woods that was not supposed to be back there. And she mind spoke to me that she had a baby back there and she was frightened because the baby was back there. I never heard words. I was just given a sense of knowing everything that was going on in those woods. There was no images in my mind. There was no words. There was nothing. I just automatically knew that there was a baby back there. She was back there and there was somebody trespassing. So I immediately ran out in the woods and that was exactly what had happened. There would have been no way I would have known that. I got it through mind speak. And I think that at times we all deny that that's what it is, but then it reoccurs enough and we become more comfortable enough with it where we start to realize that this phenomena is happening.
how does one connect with them, or do they connect with the person?
I actually think that they do better when they are the ones. I mean, we can try to connect. We can do things to encourage them to connect, but it really does come from them. They can block us out anytime they want. People that have done this for years know how, like an empath, or, people that work with them enough, we know how to block it as well. But if they want through, they're coming through. They seem to do better when they connect with us, and they start doing that in a very slow amounts. Whether you might be out in the woods and you feel like you're being watched, or you're being followed, or you think you're having just a regular dream at night and you're actually not, and they either show up in it, or they reach out to you in some way, or they do try the mind speak, and it will be very, very subtle. And it can come in a number of the ways that I described. It can come to you, but it's always subtle. The only time that they get really loud and upfront is if they get excited. These are a being that they can have patience to stand behind a tree and not move for hours at a time so nobody knows they're there. But if they have something to say, if they have information that they want you to have, they are literally like a 2-year-old child. They have no patience at all, no matter what you do. And they're going to be loud and proud, and they're going to be all over it until you finally acknowledge them. I think we tend to block most mind speak because we've always been told these things don't exist, even though they do. And we are the biggest problem with getting it. We block ourselves. Once you start opening up to the possibilities, you don't have to believe everything, but the possibilities that these things can happen, it makes it easier. And it makes it easier for them to be able to communicate like that with us. And generally, for the people that have ongoing communication with them, that's the kind of communication they start out with, whether we are aware of it or not. And then it builds up to the relationship and constant communication with them. But it always starts out subtly, unless it's something really important, and then they'll literally scream in your head.
Do they want to communicate?
A lot of them do, not all of them. It's not like the entire population wants that. What I've noticed in my lifetime is 3 separate factions of it. You have the ones that actually are curious about people, believe that there's a chance that we can be good and want that interaction. You have the ones that are just nasty and aggressive and hate us because they consider us dangerous. And just like, they're different looking to us, we're different looking to them. And then you have the third group. And the third group just doesn't want to be bothered. They're not aggressive. They're not, overly friendly. They go in out of the way places so they can just pretend we don't exist. They just, it's not that they hate us, but they are perfectly happy not knowing that we're around. And they just go off and do their own thing, and they like it that way. But the ones that want that communication and are friendly and want to be inquisitive, it's like we're out there looking for them, and the whole time they're out there looking for us. They will do subtle things. If you don't pick up on the subtlety, eventually they will do something that's a little bit more upfront to get your attention. But in a large majority of the time, they will try the mind speak first. Most of my clients, when I go to work with them, they've already had situations where mind speak, they've either already had the mind speak, or the cryptids have been trying to and can't get through. And then as I'm talking to these people, the cryptids are popping in, and they're going, well, we've tried to tell them this, or we've tried to tell them that. And they'll tell me situations. And then I'll go to my clients and say, okay, well, what about this? Do you remember this happening? And they're like, yeah. How did you know that happened? And I'm like, because that's what they're telling me. They were trying to reach out to you. People would be amazed, I think, how much they do try to communicate with us. And we really miss a lot, because we have had it so ingrained in us that things are a certain way, that when we do get the communication that we want so badly, we don't even know we're getting it. It all comes down to learning about them, their culture, their ways, and the signs of how they communicate. Just like with the mind speak, you don't realize you're getting it because you don't know what to look for. The word itself would make people think it's just words in your head when it's not just the words. It can be, but it's not just that. So a lot of it is just not knowing that you're already getting it.
So what do they say if they're wanting to communicate? What are they saying? How do they say it?
It's generally random. You know, like if you're outside and you're having a bonfire and you're roasting marshmallows or something, you know, I've had them say to people before, I want one. You know, or just an offhanded comment. Some people will just hear a hello or a command where they'll say, you know, please move away because maybe you're too close to them, or I'm here. You know, it's not anything specific. There isn't like a script that they're going to use at the beginning of any contact. It depends on the situation. It depends on the individual. It depends on what's going on, what they would say. I have a person that I've worked with many, many years, and the first thing he ever heard from them was hello, friend. You know, when they come in dream state, it can be a number of ways. Whether it's they reach out and touch somebody. I've had people contact me and say it came out of the woods and it literally, you know, touched my hand, but I was in a dream. And it's like, okay, dream state is a plane. It's just as real as when you are awake. It's just a different plane. That's the only difference. You're in dream state as a soul. When you're awake, you're in the 3D and in the physical. That's the only difference in it.
Weird. What kind of messages do they usually give you? Is it about, hey, get out of here, or hey, I want to see you, or who won the football game tonight?
Yeah, they don't usually ask about football. Depending the situation, if you're out in the woods and you get too close, they're going to say, go, leave. You know, if you're too close, or I've had them when I've been out in the woods before, warn me of situations like maybe I'm going to walk up on a snake or whatever. I have people that I work with that have been warned of bears. I've had people that have been warned of a cougar. You know, I've had other people where they've encouraged them to come into the woods to see them. You know, come this way, come meet me. When I was in Michigan, I used to go out every night with them. They would tap on my window, but then I would always get followed by mind speak of we're here, come see us. You know, again, it depends on the individual. It depends on the situation and what's warranted for that. You know, I had somebody that was staying in a campground and was in a cabin, and it was late at night, and they made sure to give him the message of stay in the cabin. You know, they had their kids out that night. They were teaching him how to hunt, and the message he kept getting was stay in the cabin because they didn't want him out there. It doesn't have to mean it's aggressive, but some of the aggressive ones will give you mind speak and say leave, or you're not wanted here. You know, I worked with somebody that had a dogman that told him, if you come back here, we will kill you. Because he had his family there. His mate was there. He had pups in there and everything else. But yet he never tried to hurt this man. Never once tried to hurt him. He just said, you will not speak of us. You will not tell of us. You are to leave and do not come back or you will be killed. But yet made no attempt to harm him in any way, shape, or form.
Robin, we got about 40 seconds with you tonight, and I always want to say thank you when you're here because you just are such a great supporter of what we do, and you help us out each and every night. Where can people get a hold of you?
You can find me at www.paranormal-empowerment.com, or you can find me on Facebook under Robin Haynes, not Robin L. Haynes, but just Robin Haynes. And thank you so much, Dave. I love being here with you guys.
It is always a pleasure to have you here, my beautiful friend. Thank you very much for coming on the Cryptid Report. We'll talk to you next week. And coming up next on Spaced Out Radio in the final half hour of the show, it's the Dave 101 tonight and the weird news of the week. Stay tuned, everybody.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm just kind of staring aimlessly into you guys right now, trying to pierce the veil of your souls. Why not? I will be going hunting this weekend. Sorry, in my head, I'm just putting together my Dave 101 for tonight. Just over a minute. Thank you tonight to Deb ×2, Aloha Dave, Necessary Dialogue, Richard, Louie, Simon, JSCO, and Cat Chaser. Greatly appreciate it. Final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. I always appreciate being able to broadcast the weird and strange to you each and every night. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the week, that time of the night, where I yell at each and every one of you to get off my lawn. It's a Dave 101.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave, D-A-V-E! What is this?
Dave's not here!
It's the Dave 101.
I can see you're really upset about this. I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.
He's the killer! Yeah! He's the killer! He's a mess.
This is kind of going to be a little bit off topic from what we normally do, where I kind of talk about the UFO world, and I talk about the Bigfoot world, the paranormal world, and everything that we broadcast about. For our fans watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. For our fans on the radio, you're just going to have to listen. My face right now is hiding a very, very bad bout of depression right now. I have been depressed as I suffer from depression and anxiety for about a week. And at any moment, I feel like I can break down and cry and just have a complete emotional breakdown. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because there are reasons to this happening. A lot of it personal. A lot of it in my daytime life where I have a second job. And a lot of dreams and hopes starting to fade away. Because we all have dreams, we all have hopes. But the reason why I'm talking about this to you guys tonight, whether you're in radio land or YouTube land or podcast land, is because this is the way I help heal myself. I don't like feeling this way. I don't like feeling like a burden. And every time I come on this show, I try and portray somebody who's a professional broadcaster who doesn't allow things to bother him, who is strong enough to take the abuse that being a public figure is, and somebody who's soft enough to be able to give each and every listener a hug. But the reality is, I'm broken. I'm broken on a number of levels. I look at my age, I'm 51 years old. I don't have a dime put away for retirement. I don't get to see my kids enough. Don't get to see my grandson enough. I don't get to do a lot of the things that I want to do. This summer, I was put into a predicament in my daytime job that I didn't want to face, as my best friend sold his business to a corporation. And now I got to be all corporate and hoity-toity. But that's for another day and more of a private conversation. It's hard when you live every day in fear. It's hard living every day thinking people are judging you. And sometimes it's not the big things that trigger you. It's the little things that absolutely push your mental health to the peak. Now, I can tell you this. I'm not somebody who would do something foolish. I'm not somebody who would do something stupid. Why? Because life is beautiful, man. Life is absolutely a gift that I think we all underappreciate, and we take it for granted because we're here. But from the time you are born, you are meant to die. That may sound morbid, but that bugs me. It bugs me when people come into my chat room and the first thing they say is, "Who's the fat guy?" You're ugly. You sound like crap. This show sucks. Now, granted, we've had it all. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't bug me. We've had it recently a lot, though. But like I said, most of the time, it doesn't bug me. But when you're already on the edge of an emotional breakdown and somebody comes in to the chat room or you get a message on social media, it's multiplied by 1,000. It really is. It's hard being a person, and I think more so for men, and I'm biased on this because I am a man. It's bothersome because we're not supposed to be like this. We're supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be the focus, the alpha. And when we show sides of being a beta man, that's where things fall apart. I look around the world today about what's happening politically in the United States, what's happening politically up here in Canada, the wars around the world, and I'm devastated. I am absolutely devastated by what is going on. I'm devastated by the way the UFO community treats each other, whether it's fellow podcasters, YouTubers, social media influencers, radio show hosts, how people will lie, cheat, and steal in order to make their names bigger, how people will just come out and insult the living daylights out of you without having the audacity or the strength or the balls to actually come to phone you up and say, "Hey, I didn't like what you said there," or "Hey, why are you doing that?" No, it's attack, attack, attack. But I'm grateful for SOR. And the one thing that keeps me grateful is knowing that I have an incredible audience that keeps growing on our digital side and on the social media side, as well as on the radio side. I'm grateful for the team that we have at SOR. You don't get to talk to many of them, but they're out there and they are always helping. I'm grateful for what I have accomplished in life. I really am. But there's always that darkness around that says you're never good enough. You're never going to make it. You're never going to be where you want to be. You're not good enough. And when you start getting that in your brain as a man, and maybe it happens as a woman as well, I don't know. But you start feeling that there's nothing that you can accomplish. And it sucks. I talk about this because as a man, we're not supposed to have this conversation. But I think over the last decade or so, men are starting to open up their eyes and realize that we can talk about this, that we're allowed to hurt, we're allowed to feel secondary, and we're allowed to question. And this is a big question. We're allowed to question, what is our value? And lately, I have been questioning my value. It's a hard question to ask yourself. It really is. Because you have to go about your day acting like nothing is going wrong. Whether you're at work, whether you're out on the town, whether you're going for dinner, to the bowling alley, or even around your family. You got to always act that there is nothing wrong. You got to be tough. You got to be sober. You have to be everything. And my problem is I do not have a crutch. The only crutch that I have is this radio show. That's it. This is why over the last number of months, you've heard me say on the radio show that I have pulled away from the UFO world, that I'm not really paying attention. I'm not really engaging. And I've made my circle of informers and friends very small. Because I just can't handle the meanness out there anymore. I can't. I've grown to the point where I don't like it. I'm tired of always having to try and impress everybody out there. Because you're always going to have your critics when you're a public face. The stories I've heard around the internet that have been made up about me aren't true. There's a few. The stories that, people saying that we're into too much woo, I don't care. Just come here and try and have some fun. And hope that each and every one of you get to enjoy a few moments in my fun. And hopefully in my fun, we're able to bring that fun to you. Depression is a very, very harsh and real thing. You're never comfortable. You're never warm. You're never cold. You're never hungry, but you're always starving. You tell yourself that tomorrow's the day I'm going to go for that walk. Tomorrow's the day I'm going to quit drinking Pepsi. Tomorrow's the day that I will not have that chocolate that I'm saving for Halloween to hand out to kids. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. And those tomorrows start to add up. But there's a positive lining in all of this, especially for men. When you reach out for help, you'd be amazed at how many people will help you. You'll be amazed at how many people want to give you a hug, how many people want to give you a lending ear. You'll be amazed if you allow yourself to find out how loved you truly are. that it's not about other people who are being negative or maybe don't get the way you broadcast or the way you tell stories or the people you have on. It's not about the negative. It's about how you're positively affecting those around you. In my case, it's you, the listeners. It's our guests. It's the people who help out to create this show each and every night. And for that, as I battle my way through my own personal darkness right now, that is the shining light that I need, is all of you. That's your Dave 101.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Loud noises!
I am good at things, fighting and reading the news.
It's time once again for Spaced Out Radio's Weird News of the Week.
A man who has taken body modification to the extreme has revealed the daily struggles he faces thanks to his looks. No, really? Really? Anthony Lafredo cut off some of his fingers, both of his ears, in a bid to achieve his dream of becoming an alien. The French native's journey began a decade ago when he had his tongue split like a snake. Now 36, he's tattooed almost all of his body black, including his eyes. He has facial implants and even amputated part of his lips and nose. Some of his modifications were so extreme, he had to travel to different parts of the world to get them done by standing out of a crowd that brings its own problems, says Anthony. In 2023, a documentary called I Transformed Myself into an Alien, Anthony gets candid about the discrimination he faces in his day-to-day life. He recalls being barred from restaurants, turned down from job interviews, and having Uber drivers simply zooming past him. The guy can't even open an OnlyFans account because the app couldn't recognize him to verify his profile. Anthony provided further insight on the Club 113 podcast in 2022, explaining it's an everyday struggle because every day you find new people who don't understand, who want to judge. That's life. Not everyone understands everything, just like I don't understand many things about many people. It must take a toll. In the last year, Anthony, who now lives in Mexico, announced he was putting the project on pause. His next phase was to amputate his leg, replacing it with a biomedical prosthetic. It's understood that he never went ahead. And last December, he pulled the plug on the rest of the black alien journey altogether. In an Instagram post, he announced the project had lost all meaning to him. But his hiatus didn't last long. Over the summer, a tattoo enthusiast, he is, returned to offer fans the opportunity to join him in his transformation through the Black Alien Inc. program. The course gives fans the chance to learn about safety, health, hygiene, and, of course, tattooing, so they could give their body makeovers too. Apparently, the course is highly successful on its website, saying our method is not special, it's not secret, it's not magic. It just works. And yes, there are other ways to learn, some cheaper, other more expensive, but there are no better ones. Bold claims from Anthony there. And he has 1.3 million fans and subscribers on Instagram that he keeps updated. He's now about 75% way through his body transformation. Captioning a video of him gets more of his face tattooed black. He wrote, I'm coming back strong to the game with my great evolution. I love this face a little uglier. It's too bad. He's a handsome guy, too, in shape. But if it makes him happy, makes him happy. A TikToker claims to have captured the mythical creature on video. What creature are we talking about here? Bigfoot. You heard us talk about this a couple of days ago. Video is posted by Emmanuel Afaro, now boasts more than 8.4 million views. Scariest moment of my life, he says. I really thought I caught a Bigfoot on camera in parallel forest, he captioned. I was just doing some sightseeing and enjoying the day and saw something in the distance. I'm still shaking as I type this. The parallel forest is in Lawton, Oklahoma, is described by the Thrillist as a dark maze like the creepiest hike of your life. So it's fitting that one would find a Bigfoot there. Go figure. The 9-second footage shows an orange creature sitting against a tree and sniffing some flowers before it realizes it's being watched and locked eyes on Alfaro, who exclaims, "Oh crap," in a more swearing word, before he takes off and the video cuts. Commenters have had no sympathy for the TikToker, called him out on the so-called sighting. Second user joked, "It can't be him. The real Bigfoot is blurry. Haven't y'all seen the pics?" Yeah, I still don't believe that video. I really don't. Maybe I should, but it just looks too rubbery and too fake. Sheriff deputies in Washington's Kitsap County frequently get calls about animals, loose livestock, problem dogs. You know the way. Yeah, not this time though. Why? It's actually kind of cute. It is kind of cute. Well, because the house got surrounded by about a dozen raccoons digging up the yard. Hello, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Paul. Rocking in the background with little brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LDL, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my friends,
Don't make a mistake. We're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. Soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. One second here. All right. Where am I here? Here we go. Daryl Denton's back tomorrow night. We're talking about the land between the lakes, the LBL, Dogman incident. I'm good there. One sec here. Okay, that's updated. That should work. All right. How we doing? If you have any questions about the Dave 101, just ask them. I'm an open book. I may not give you the answer that you want, but I'm an open book. Dr. John Brandenburg is a theoretical plasma physicist born in Rochester, Minnesota. Good hockey around there, by the way. Grew up in Medford, Oregon, though. He obtained his BA in physics with mathematics as a minor from Southern Oregon University in 1975 and obtained his MS, his master's in 77, PhD in plasma physics, both from University of California, Davis in 1981.
I wanted to be as conventional as possible.
Use this. This is exactly what I talked about with the nickel and dime stuff. Um, give me a sec. That sucks. Why is this not working? You gotta be kidding me right now. It's funny, I have plenty of space on my computer, and it's telling me that I cannot edit because I have very low free disk space. Go fuck yourself, San Diego. I'll get rid of that one, see what happens there. Don't even know what that is. Oh, that could go in the garbage. Of course. Anything on this side? Nothing. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm not watching you guys right now. I'm trying to figure out my computer here. I can't even think to do this. Hey, Robbie, are you around? Hey, sweet Robbie, can you send just pick a show, any show? I was going to use Sheldon Quaisance and just cut it up and send it to the radio stations, please, because I can't use this one. I'm going to have to do tests tomorrow. I think I know what the problem is, but do you mind just sending cut-ups to our radio stations? And I just can't mentally take this tonight. Thank you. I'm going to sign off the air here because this has just really pushed me to my limit. And I'm sorry for burdening you guys, even though I know I'm not a burden, but it's a Canadian thing to do, just to say sorry. So sorry. We'll see you tomorrow night. Daryl Denton is here. Love you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.